I'm so happy to say that the pride of Timmins, Ontario, Shania Twain, joins me now to talk about it. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so nice to see you. You know, this album is often referred to as your breakthrough album, and in many ways, it really is. I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about who you were right before the record came out and your vision for what you wanted this album to be.
Well, when this album came out, The Woman in Me, I was just coming out of being a small town Canadian artist trying to make it in Nashville and struggling to pay my bills and a long way from home. And, feeling pretty alone in the world. That's where I was.
And did you envision this album as your way out of that?
Well, I would have hoped that, you know, um, at the time, let's put it this way, I had no idea it was going to be what it became. I certainly hoped that it would be successful, but my idea of what I thought that could be was was nowhere near where it ended up. I have to admit that. Um, you know, what I actually remember a conversation with my label head at the time. He said, he called me with some great news. He goes, I've got some good news. He said, how many albums do you think um, the record has sold? If you were to imagine a number. And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, it would be incredible and pretty much a miracle if it sold 3 million. And he said, oh, well, it's way beyond that.
Oh my
So
God.
I was just like, okay, this is already way beyond anything that I'd anticipated. So I don't know what I was hoping for, but it's beyond what I could have hoped for, that's for sure.
What I find interesting about it is that the first record, like the first record, which, I think most people know The Woman in Me as your first record, but there's a record that came before it, and you only wrote one of the songs on that record. I mean, The Woman in Me is almost exclusively your songs, your songwriting. How much of that, the fact that you wrote these songs, the fact that you were behind the message behind these songs, do you think had to do with the success of the record?
Well, I think that a lot of what is behind the success of any album is being able to be original and unique. And a good way to do that, if you're a songwriter, is to write your own songs, to record your own songs. Um, so I think that just being able to have that opportunity to self-express, to pour my attitude and my character into the songwriting, to have a producer that nurtured that edge and that personality was important.
I, I'm happy. I'm happy you said that character and that edge, because I was reading reviews of the record when it came out, and one stuck out to me that I loved and said, just because she had the upper hand didn't mean she couldn't offer a gentle touch too. And there's a lot of talk about how it's tough and it's funny and powerful, but it's still, vulnerable. Like, how much of that was intentional in who you were on this record?
It was very important that I wanted to particularly show contrast, and that a woman can be confident, assured in her opinions, in her point of view, um, and still be feminine and vulnerable like any human being. I didn't want to portray that I was invincible in any way. I'm just human, but I'm a strong woman and a sensitive one.
And I think that hadn't been seen as much in country music before. And I think that's what a lot of people really took from this record. They really were able to identify with on this record. Do you know what I mean?
I do, because I think the fact that The Woman in Me was for the most part, very upbeat. And there were a lot of, you know, I don't know if I can say this here, but, you know, kick-ass attitudes, and very straightforward lyrics. But so, you know, in that sense, it was very liberating for a lot of people that maybe were a little more insecure about expressing their opinions and being a little bit different. And you know, at the same time, I just think as an artist, as a songwriter, as somebody with something to say, we all have something to say, but I think that we need others to sometimes open those doors for us and to be vessels for us, to be communicators for us. So I think the album did that a lot for people, and for me too. I mean, it was liberating for me. I use music as a self-expression platform.
So you were telling your own story here. You were talking to yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I was, you know, I was just even coming up with these lyrics. I was thinking, should I say that? Is that going to be offensive? And then I'm like, don't second guess yourself. Just say what's on your mind. Say it like it is.
That going with your impulse is important to the story of this record. And I think especially when it comes to this song right here. Take a listen to this.
And if I change my mind a million times, I want to hear him say, yeah, 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 like it that way. Any man of mine.
Shania, that song still rules, by the way. Any Man of Mine, 25 years on, is still just a banger. It's so good.
I love it. I love it too. I have to say, after all these years, I really enjoy it on stage. It's punchy. It's totally my frame of mind.
Here's the reason I brought up your instinct in talking about that song, because I heard a story that, you know, when you wanted to release that song as the first single, they said no, and they said it wouldn't necessarily. Your label said no, it wouldn't necessarily work on the radio. It was too powerful or too strong for a woman. It ended up becoming your first number one. Can you tell me a little bit? Is that story right?
It's true. I was so excited about that song. I wanted it to be the first single. And everyone said, no, it's too bold. It's too daring. It's going to be too offensive. Nobody wants to hear, you know, the men don't want to hear a woman telling them how it's going to be. And then the women don't want to be, they don't want to feel, they might feel intimidated by your sense of independence. And I'm like, no, this is an all-inclusive, empowering song for everyone. And I saw it as a positive message, not a negative one. But so anyway, I was going around to radio playing the music. They were all kind of shocked when they heard Any Man of Mine. First of all, sonically, it's like, whoa, this is very in my face. I loved it. I'm like, yeah, I can feel it. We were not always on the same page, let's put it that way. But it did end up being the second single, and still one of my biggest songs.
And I wonder if that taught you a lesson about trusting yourself, or that you might be right and other people might be wrong. You know, you saw a promise in that song that other people didn't see, and I wonder if that taught you a lesson.
Well, I mean, you know, you never know. I mean, they might have been right about it being the first single. Maybe it would have been too bold for the very first one. We'll never know. But Who's Better Be Boots by None was the first single, and it's also, I mean, one of the audience's favorite live songs. So, you know, every single on that album had its place and its purpose, and it's just great looking back on it all.
Well, speaking of looking back on it, I want to play you one more clip. Take a listen to this.
When the nights get too long and I just can't go on, the woman in me needs you to be.
I love that. If you're just tuning in, my guest is Shania Twain. Her landmark album, The Woman in Me, turns 25 this year. It's being re-released with all sorts of bonus content. And I want to read a quote that you said about this record. Everything written on this album was related to what I was feeling in that moment, in time, in my youth. So we've talked a lot about what this album did for your career, but I wonder what it's like to listen back to young Shania there. Very different person.
Different in many ways. I have a lot more experience now. I am more comfortable in my own skin. I wouldn't have considered myself even then as a very fragile person. I was pretty, I wouldn't say that I was necessarily very confident yet, but I was confident in what I thought. And I look back on that person, that age, and think, I was more than ready. I was already 30 when I had my first hit. So even though I was just getting started as a successful recording artist, I was 30. I was a woman. So yeah, it's interesting that because I had a lot of living to do before I made it. A lot of sacrifice, a lot of hardship, a lot of hard work, and I wasn't a kid.
No,
I wasn't. I was way ready. I was very ready.
It is, and listen, I want to be sensitive about this, and I'm not here to talk about your relationships, but it is. The album was produced by Mutt Lange, your ex-husband. You know, he up until that point had worked with people like AC/DC and Def Leppard and Bryan Adams, and was a big Slim Whitman country fan, but had kind of kept that hidden. And when I listen to this record now, your brilliant songwriting and his real trademark production, it's hard not to feel and hear a collaboration between you two. And that's just me. I wonder what it's like for you to listen back to this record as a collaboration with your ex, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, we were strong collaborators. We had the songwriting came very naturally to us. Not that it was easy to write successful music, but it was easy to exchange creatively. He's a great musician. He would always come up with these great riffs, and then I would get inspired. And then I always had these one-liner lyrics that he would, that would make him light up. And then we'd start writing that as a song. So we really played off each other. It was a good teamwork environment. And we had a lot of mutual respect as well for each other's ideas. Mm-hmm. He really nurtured my independent nature and my and he was humored by my attitude, and thought I was quite funny with my directness. And so all of that was captured. He was, as a producer, he captured that in the records and in the songwriting. So listening back to it, just awesome memories. Making the album, really, really, really great memories. The personal life and the record making was very different. They were two separate parts of us as a team. Interesting enough, yeah. So I'm able to look back at the music and just feel good, really.
That's great. It would be horrible if you only heard the hard times. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Like if I wasn't able to sing those songs anymore or something like that, it would be difficult. But to be honest, I was really writing when that quote that you read earlier. I always write from my own self. And so I'm not emotionally attached to another person, or I don't have an emotional dependency on anybody else. When it comes to my writing, maybe that's it.
When you say you write from your own self, it's interesting to me because you you stand on stage and you sing, Any Man of Mine, or you sing Whose Bed Have Your Boots Been Under, or you sing like Man, I Feel Like a Woman, or you sing Swinging with My
Yeah.
Eyes Closed, or something like that. And there are legions, there are thousands of young women in that audience, specifically young women, or just women in that audience, I should say, who are singing their own song while they're singing your song, if that makes sense to you.
Hmm.
Does that occur to you? Does that occur to you, like what your music has meant to a generation of women?
It really does, because they are, I really believe that once you record a song and you release it, it belongs to everybody else. And it belongs in their life, in their story. It's telling their story. Life's about to get good. I see the audience light up. Everybody's been through some sort of heartbreak or some sort of betrayal. And they really embrace looking on the bright side. And that goes for a lot of the music. So it's fun for me and rewarding for me to watch the audience owning the music. It's just so cool. So yeah, I see it every night. I read a lot of things as well, but live shows are really where you see the audience express their ownership of the songs, of the music.
We got to go, so I'll leave you with this. When I was reading all these old reviews when the first record came out, and they weren't all incredibly generous for such a well-loved album. But and a lot of them said like, oh, it doesn't sound like country music. It sounds a little too pop. It sounds a little too pop. And Shania, I listen to a lot of country music, and I was listening to it going like, no, it doesn't. This sounds like a country music album to me. And then I had this realization that you didn't sound like country music. Country music now sounds like Shania Twain. Do you know what I mean by that?
I do. I hear it too. It is definitely, yeah. No, I hear it too. I hear the influence. But I also hear the more, I don't know. I was just making my own music. I don't even know how to describe it.
You hear it in Taylor Swift, you hear it in Maren Morris, you hear it in everybody. And I just want to say everybody here in Canada is so proud of you. And congratulations on this. And what a lovely record. What a lovely experience it was to revisit it and spend some time with it again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I love you, Canada.